This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, Shalom Aleichem, Baruchim Haba. We continue in the Iggeres HaMussar of Rabbi Salanter. If I could take the opportunity for a little advertisement, if anybody still wants to join us for the trip to Mekaymes HaKadoshim, we have Baruch Hashem a very nice group going from Eretz Yisrael, from France, and maybe you as well. So if you would like to join us, we'd be very happy to have you. Okay, so we continue in the Iggeres HaMussar, and Rabbi Yisrael has sort of released his great chidush, and that is that Torah alone is not strong enough to fight the Yetzer Hara, but it's the Yira of the Torah. It's an element of the Torah that helps us fight the Yetzer Hara, namely the Yira Shamayim, learning about the Oinshim for particular Averos, the reward for particular mitzvahs. And Rav Goldberg in Oislam and Beis points out that this kind of medication, even though we typically say Barasi Yitzhahar, Barasi Torah Tavlin, so one would say that there's no medication for a woman is not mitzvah and Talmud Torah. Nevertheless, this aspect of learning is applicable to a woman, namely that we know women can make Berachas HaTorah even though they're not mechuyeves to learn Torah, but they're mechuyev to learn the mitzvos that are relevant to them, and therefore they could learn about the severity of various areas of Torah, and that will serve as medication. Now, Rabbi Yisrael says that in general, the general medication is a physical medication. Namely, the yira that emanates from the Torah is a physical medication, and that's in general to know and to understand that Averos have oinshim, mitzvahs have reward, but specifically, and Rabbi Yisrael says this is the most potent medication, to learn the Torah relevant to a particular Avera. In other words, Rabbi Yisrael says, if somebody is liable to gaiva, to learn in the Torah the halachos of gaiva. If somebody has an issue with business, to learn the laws of proper business interaction. And Rav Goldberg says, but there are many Talmidei Chachamim, they spend their whole day learning Nezikin, and yet they can walk out of the Beis Medrash and rob you blind. Says Rabbi Yisrael, that's because they're not learning for the purpose of elevating themselves in the area of being careful in business transactions. But if somebody spent time learning what belongs to them and what doesn't, what is permitted to partake of, what is not, so that will have a very strong effect. Says Rabbi Yisrael, Haniskov, the most elevated, Behoikar in the primary, Beshimush Refues HaTorah, and using this medication of the Torah, Latachlue HaYetzer, in combating the Yetzer Hara, who lilmoid ba'oiz, is to learn with strength, ve'ion amoik, and deep analysis, heite, very well, dinei ha'avera atzma, the details of the avera itself, ha'halacha, the laws in kol se'ifeha with all of its particulars, ki einenu haroyos, because our eyes see, harbe me ha'averos, many of the sins, asher ha'adam nimna mehem beteva, that a person refrains from naturally. Our eyes see many of the averos that a person naturally refrains from. V'lo yavar aleim, and a person wouldn't violate them. Afgam be'es asher yechatzenu ze'izah davar, even if he's under great pressure. Right? We all know there are many averos that nobody would ever violate. You know, chametz on Pesach. No frum Jew has a taiva to have chametz on Pesach. No frum Jew has a taiva to have. An Ashkenazi Jew wouldn't have a kidneys on Pesach. Right? Imagine you went with a bowl of rice. Here, nobody's looking. Have some rice. Get it. It's not a temptation even. You give somebody chicken and meat and milk. Okay, just get out of here. You're not even tempting the person. V'yeshnam averos chamurus me'enu. They're much more strict averos. V'ha'adam atzmai. And this very person could easily violate them. Derech mashal, by way of example, a large segment of our population, kamat rubam, if not most of them, kakulam, if not Rubam Kakolam, Lo Yoichlu B'li Netilas Yadayim Chila, would not eat without washing their hands. Most from Jews would not eat bread without washing their hands. Af Gam Be'is Asher Yeravu V'Yitztaru Harbe, even at a time that they're extremely hungry. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case anymore, because people go on airplanes and they fall for the fallacy of a mazonos roll, which there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a mazonos roll. It doesn't exist. It never existed. It will never exist. It's halachically impossible to have a mazonos roll. By dint of the fact that if you're eating it for a meal, you're being kaveh suda, so it automatically becomes hamoitzi. But back in the day, no Jew would eat bread without washing their hands. The lashon hara chamur, and lashon hara, which is much more severe, B'nakol yavrol, a person easily violates, gam b'li taiva gadol, without a big desire. So says Rabbi Yisrael, why is that? And by the way, the Gra writes, this is in a footnote on the Even Shlema of the Gra, that the reason why people are not careful about lashon hara, and by the way, the Chafetz Chaim writes the same thing, is it's a matter of habit. It's very hard to break old habits, and people from the time they're young have developed a habit to speak whatever's on their mind. By the way, that's one of the very difficult challenges in davening. Why is it so hard to daven with kavanah? Because they start training us to daven from the time we're 5 years old. So basically we're davening for 10 years before we even could translate the words. And basically, we have such an ingrained habit of just saying the words without kavanah that it's so hard to break that. So here's the challenge in life. How do you overcome things that we do wrong that have become habitual? V'ata hinenu royim. And now, behold, we see ki ikar hashmira meha avera, the main way to guard from doing an avera, hirak lasos hahergol teva itzel ha'adam, to make it a second nature to a person. Yeah, the only way really to overcome an avera successfully is if a person develops a habit not to do that avera. If a person makes it second nature not to do that avera. If a person makes it that he's not really tempted by that avera. Al kain, therefore, afim yisamitz ha'adam halazah. Therefore, this is a very important thing. If a person is tempted by a particular sin, you could learn all the mussar in the world. It's going to be very hard not to do the avera. Once a person sins habitually, even if they learn the mussar and they learn the inspiration of why they shouldn't do the avera, it's going to be very hard not to do the avera when it becomes second habit. You have somebody, he bites their nail. Somebody bites their nails. Okay. So, come Shabbos, it's a problem. It's the very least Isser D'Rabbanan, if not Isser D'Oraisa. So, you could hear a million Shabbos Haggadah drashas about the chomer of Shabbos, but if you have a habit of biting your nails, when it gets into your head, you want to bite your nails, you're going to bite them on Shabbos, even though you know how bad it is. Why? But you just learned an hour of mussar. The answer is because habit is very hard to kick. Alkain, even a person is strong to go on the path of mussar, liga atzmai, to exert oneself, b'shmira, from guarding milashon hara. In other words, let's say a person habitually speaks lashon hara, and now he learns mussar, and he wants to energize all of his senses and kol chusha, with all of one's feelings, v'rayonav, and thoughts, kiyas, as is proper, b'chol zois, nevertheless, kaloid shalei neschalev tivoi v'hargei lo bazeh, so long as a person has not changed his habit, shelo yeh shum chayfetz tivi l'saper lashon hara, that he doesn't have a natural desire to speak lashon hara, yoiser ya'avar b'nokel al lashon hara. It will be very easy to violate lashon hara. Me'asher yochel b'li netil yadayim chalila, than to speak, heaven forbid, without netil yadayim. Even though lashon hara is much worse than someone who doesn't wash netil yadayim. Someone who doesn't wash netil yadayim is violating a d'Rabbanan. Someone who habitually speaks lashon hara is a kofer be'ikar ve'ein lo chelek lo olam haba. And yet, most people more freely speak lashon hara than they don't wash netil yadayim, and the reason is because they have a habit to speak lashon hara. Or let's say, for example, a person has someone in their life who they put down. Their associate, their brother, their wife, their husband, and they have a habit of doing it. So, yeah, they know it's Oinoas Dvarim. They know they're not allowed to. They're so ragil in doing that thing that they could hear a million shmuz and it's not going to change them. It's going to be very hard to overcome. This is applicable by any kind of sin. Hakol lefi ha'adam, depending on the person, v'hazman, and the time, v'hamachois, and the district. Ki gam lo kol hamachois v'shavos b'zeh. Not all districts are the same. In some communities, certain sins are more frequently violated than others, and in other communities, it's a different sin. Ki yem ischafim be'inyanim. Kol machois yeshay averos acheros. Every location has their own Averos asher yishmar etzlam benakel, that they can easier guard from, umeruchak mehem beteva, and is more distant from them by nature. So, we will see tomorrow that Rabbi Yisrael sort of unleashes his greatest weapon of all, that even more potent than learning Mussar about something is learning the halachos of that subject be'ion. That type of learning will have a deeper impact even than learning Mussar. Because if, let's say, a person spends a week learning in the Mishnah Berurah the details of different kind of hangnails and biting and cutting and using a scissor and the different shitos, that will actually counteract the habit. So that could be even more potent than Mussar. Or if somebody spent a time learning the sugya of Oinoas Dvarim, or of that's why the Chafetz Chaim writes, one of the reasons he wrote a sefer on Lashon Hara is that if a person learns a subject be'ion, besides the psychological factor that Rabbi Yisrael is saying that it helps develop a new habit, there is a chazal, I believe the Medrash in Parshas Nosai says that if you learn something be'ion, Hashem removes the Yetzer Hara from you in that area. Okay, well, Be'ez Hashem continue tomorrow. Thanks everyone for joining. Most likely the Wednesday night share this week will be Thursday night. Okay? That's what it seems like because of weddings, graduation, and other things going on. So Daf HaShavua 9:15 Monday. Tuesday night is graduation. We're going to do Daf HaShavua a little bit later in the night. And Thursday night will be the regular share. Kol tov, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.